Hello and welcome. If you're interested in value stream management and all the latest news from that space, then stick around. Hello and welcome to the Cloud Therapist channel. I'm Richard Simon. This particular talk is all about value stream management, or VSM for short. A report came out recently which talks all about the state of value stream management within organizations. And I'm very proud to have Helen Beal from the VSM consortium to tell us all about it. Hello, Helen. Welcome to the Cloud Therapist channel.
Hi, thanks very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good to have you on. Helen, let's kind of just maybe kick off with a quick summary bio of yourself, please.
So I'm an independent consultant. I have multiple roles. So I'm CEO and chair of the Value Stream Management Consortium. I also co-chair the Value Stream Management Interoperability Technical Committee at oasis.org. I'm the Chief Ambassador at DevOps Institute, now part of PeopleCert, and I provide strategic advisory services to various companies wanting to do more with DevOps and value stream management.
Fantastic. So that must keep you all busy then, all that stuff.
Got a few different hats to wear. Yes.
Indeed. Okay, so can you kind of just provide us a little bit more detail about the Value Stream Management Consortium and kind of what is it, what does it do?
Yeah, so it's a not-for-profit trade association and membership community. We were founded back in March 2021, so we're still quite new. We're funded by our members, and our mission really is to nurture and help this emerging practice or set of practices we call value stream management come into the community to share best practice and good practice and share what people are finding out about how to use value stream management to improve organizational performance alongside other practices like DevOps. We do focus on digital value streams at the moment.
Right.
We are quite young, quite small. Value stream management is a very big cross-industry topic, but we focus on digital value streams because we believe that software has eaten the world. Mark Andreessen's comment that it was eating the world has been surpassed. So we do live in a digital economy. So if a company is wanting to succeed in the digital economy, then the digital value streams are going to be their strategic differentiators. Added to which, while value stream management has conceptually been around for quite a long time, it's undergoing a renaissance that started about 3 or 4 years ago, which has been partly triggered by the increasing prevalence of things like DevOps toolchains. So we spent 15 odd years learning how to do CI/CD, and that has now made data available that makes our value streams visible in a way in the digital world that they haven't been previously.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I'll sort of include links in the description of the video for all the stuff that Helen does, and we'll kind of provide some of that. You and I obviously did the Skill Up event recently as well. We did the fireside chat. That was really enjoyable, and again, I'll provide links for that. So let's get into the report itself. Now, for me, kind of personally, the reason why I wanted to kind of do this report and kind of go through it with you was because I'm really kind of into value stream management. I really kind of like the idea, and it's kind of sets some sort of a particular approach, and you have the so-called kind of flow type of thing, and that kind of really provides a framework for how you do things like DevOps, Agile, and and things like that. So I think it's really helpful for organizations and enterprise to be able to kind of use VSM, and that's why I'm kind of very much an advocate of it. Can you kind of give us a reason why you guys did the report? What's kind of been the main sort of thing for you guys doing it?
Well, it's our 3rd year of the report. So we launched the first survey when we actually launched the organisation back in 2021. We are an independent body. We do have a number of vendors within our membership base, as well as enterprise organisations and consultancies. So we're well placed to give an independent view. Our research differs perhaps from some of the other industry analysts in that we don't look at the VSM platforms themselves. What we're looking at is the practices and the adoption rates and the relationship between the practices and organizational performance.
Right, excellent. Yeah, and I think that's kind of maybe even more useful than necessarily the platforms and tools. It's kind of who's using it, how they're using it, and things like that, I guess. And so how would kind of, if anybody's interested in looking at the report, how do we be able to obtain it?
If they head over to vsmconsortium.org, it's there on the homepage. They can also click on the State of VSM Reports link, or the research link from the menu as well, and get to it that way.
Fantastic. And you've had obviously a number of supporters, who've kind of helped with the reports itself, the likes of Broadcom, Plutora, OpenText, ServiceNow, and a number of others as well. So it's kind of really got some good backing there. And also, I did pick up on some of the demographics of those, folks that you guys surveyed. I think 40%, it said, of the respondents were kind of from large organizations with 10,000 plus employees. The range of kind of the type of people, I think, was everything from CXOs down to sort of DevOps engineers and evangelists and so on. And again, sort of across, sort of verticals as well, everything from government to manufacturing, finance, and so on. So it's kind of really a good comprehensive view and kind of canvassing lots of different opinion, I guess, as well.
Yeah, it's a pretty good spread demographically. I think we're particularly interested in the enterprise adoption. As you've noticed, quite a few of our bigger members are from the vendor side. I think if we look at what triggered the renaissance in VSM, we can point back at 2018 to a Forrester Wave report, which did report on more vendors, putting capabilities in these areas. What we're really looking at now is to understand enterprise adoption. So we do have a lot of enterprises within our influencer membership base. And what we're trying to do is expand that. So if we look at Flowtopia, for example, so Flowtopia is the Value Stream Management Consortium's annual flagship event. This year, it's just gone, actually, just about a month ago. We just had it in Las Vegas. It was our second edition. One of the things that was super interesting about that was we had a whole host of new enterprises speaking on stage for us, including Netflix and Shutterstock and Parchment and Beku, Unum. We had Susan came over from Sydney. She works for Telstra, telecoms company. We had Dennis come over from Athens. He works for Deutsche Telekom, so some telecoms companies practicing VSM there as well. So it was great to hear more from the enterprises, what they're doing. One of my favourite talks was actually Phil Clark, who's a VP of applications at Parchment, because he took our value stream implementation roadmap, which is a visual that we use to explain to people the steps that they need to go through in order to adopt VSM in their organization. And he actually applied dates and years to it from when he had completed the various steps. And he went back about 4 years, which obviously predates the birth of the Value Stream Management Consortium. So we spend a lot of time at the consortium, particularly last year at Flowtopia, talking about the technology adoption curve and where we are on it and whether we've crossed the chasm and how long it will be until VSM is mainstream. So it was just very interesting to see somebody acknowledge that they had been using these practices and calling them that for this length of time.
Right. Yeah. Fantastic. And I think I did keep actually in touch with that. I did notice you guys were having a bit of a good time in Las Vegas with the Flowtopia. So with you and Steve Pereira as well. So that was wonderful. Okay. So let's kind of dive into the report itself a little bit. So looking at the sort of the early part of the report, I think you've kind of sectioned it into sort of planning for value delivery, delivering value, measuring value, and kind of leading with value. So there's kind of the 4 sections, I believe. But on page 5, it's kind of said, well, there was a term on there that maybe I'd like you to kind of go into a little bit more. It says digital value streams. You mentioned it earlier in your intro, but kind of just expand on what it means a little bit.
So value stream management comes out of manufacturing, essentially. So you can trace it back to the 1400s to things like the Venetian arsenal, but I think most people would point to the 1950s Ford, and then perhaps even bigger, TPS, the Toyota production system, as the origin of things like information flow and information mapping. Which is where we really got value stream mapping from. In the 1990s, there's a book called The Great Transition by James Martin that was published, which is where we started talking about value stream management. But this was kind of, very early days of the internet. It was kind of pre the digital world that we understand now. So a lot of what they were talking about then were kind of more the management practices around being able to see physical things. So what's happened since then is that we have developed into this global digital economy, and value stream management still continues to exist. Now, my route into value stream management was via DevOps, and it became more and more apparent to me the more work I did around things like value stream mapping and metrics and working with teams and organizations on trying to change their culture and implement DevOps tool chains across the organization, that the invisibility of software is really particularly challenging. So when we talk about pipelines in the software sense, you can't walk into a factory and see stuff in the way that you can with manufacturing. So there's a couple of things at play here. One is, again, the fact that we live in a digital economy. So a lot of what we do with each other, B2C and B2B as well, is now done via software applications in a digital space. So when I say a digital value stream, I basically mean a software-based value stream. So I'm saying it's not a value stream that is manufacturing a car. It's the value stream that is helping us enhance software products. And this is particularly interesting. We haven't really covered it in this year's report. I think we probably did in the 2021 report, and it is covered in quite some detail in our Value Stream Management Foundation course as well. But conceptually, software manufacturing is quite different from physical good manufacturing. So if we take an example like Heinz ketchup, which is our favorite example, with Heinz ketchup, you might spend quite a lot of time designing the product. So, developing your recipe, testing it out, designing your bottles, your labels, and all that kind of stuff. And then once it's designed, you'll manufacture it, and you'll manufacture millions, potentially billions of units of the same product. Whereas in software, we have what we call these long-lived products, as you know, and these long-lived products are large masses of code. And when we manufacture something new, it's generally an enhancement. It might be a fix, but it's some kind of enhancement. And we only design and deliver that once. So our design part is a much bigger proportion, it ends up, than our actually production and delivery, because we only produce and deliver it once. And we've made that even shorter in the DevOps world because of what we've done with CI/CD pipelines, so automating that delivery mechanism.
Right. Yeah. And you said kind of the VSM was sort of is born out of a kind of a renaissance recently. So another term that's kind of come up is flow. So that's kind of in that sort of agile, DevOps, lean sort of thing. But what's kind of flow about? And kind of just explain a little bit about what do you guys mean by flow?
Yeah, just before I go into that, I just want to reflect on what you just said about all these different ways of working. And I come from an agile and then a DevOps background myself, and a lot of our community comes from a very strong lean background. And sometimes we talk about DevOps being the harmonious polygamous marriage between lean, ITSM, and agile. So these are all linked. I used to do a presentation many years ago, people probably still find it out there, called the DevOps super pattern, where I used to talk about the relationship between all these ways of working and the concept of standing on the shoulders of giants. So there's huge amounts of kind of Venn diagrams that you can draw over these ways of working. And for me, I sometimes talk about VSM as being the next generation of DevOps. For me, DevOps kind of hit some ceilings in terms of what it could do on its own, which is what kind of triggered me to get into VSM, was the experiences I was having with my clients in terms of revisiting value stream maps, in particular, getting metrics right. And in fact, if we look at things like the 2021 State of DevOps report from Puppet, we can see that they've identified this kind of frozen middle layer as well, as not to be confused with the frozen middle management layer that we often see in enterprises, but this idea that a lot of organizations are struggling to get out of the middle tier of performers when they're using DevOps. So for me, VSM is kind of the key to unlocking the next stage of the promises that DevOps has given us. And DevOps also is quite a lot of the toolkit. So what VSM does is it gives us a greater ability to see where the problems are in our flow, and therefore DevOps then gives us the tools to unlock the promises of that flow. So flow isn't a uniquely VSM term, as you've identified. It's been around in agile and lean, and certainly if we look at the 3 ways as identified in the Phoenix project, that is the first way, as well as improving the flow from left to right. I think one of the other things that's worth mentioning, though, is that at the VSMC, we have this duality of dimensions when we talk about VSM. So flow is part of it. So flow for us is about outputs. It's about efficiency. It's about the time to market, how long it takes us to deliver that value. So it's kind of a software engineering in practice mainly, or of interest mainly to the software engineers in the way that we traditionally set up our enterprises. But our other dimension is about value realization. So that is about the effectiveness of the work that we're doing. That's about customer experience and customer feedback and knowing that we're doing the right things. Because if our time to market can be wonderful, but if what we're delivering isn't what our users or our customers want, then having fast flow means nothing. So those two dimensions need to be tied together in order to really deliver on the promise of VSM.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, I do agree with that. I think it's all about the sort of the value that's delivered. Now, I believe on that same page, it said digital products, platforms, or value streams. And I think it tied that with 75% of respondents saying, a great deal of their value stream management is based on those things. And I presume that's kind of around what you said about it all being these days kind of, or at least in the sort of the IT space and DevOps, all being digital these days, right?
Yes, it is. We are increasingly digital. I don't think anyone would disagree with that fact. I think what's interesting as well, though, is that we see higher performers within the digital space, and that's partly because I think I've alluded to this a couple of times, that just bring it out a little bit more strongly. When we're digital, we have data, and one of the things we've lacked a lot of in the past is actually the telemetry and the information that allows us to have the insights and make the decisions that we want to make in order to make our business more successful.
Yeah, and I mean, even things like whiteboarding and stuff and ideations are going on those sort of online tools these days. There was this, and I think you mentioned this earlier. The all companies are tech companies, or the all companies are software companies. And I think that's a interesting way to do things, and I very much agree with that, because I think that is I do often hear about sort of software or IT being the main driver for the business as well, and I think you've reflected that in the report.
Yeah, I think I was referring to Mark Andreessen's quote, software's eating the world. But yeah, following on from that, absolutely, all companies are tech companies. Perhaps very soon we're going to have all companies are AI companies, and Domino's saying that they're not a pizza company, they're an AI company, as they personalize my pizza and send it to me on a Tuesday night before I've even ordered it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that will be the next one. Okay, so there was a section. There's a section called Wow Moments in the report, and it said 15% increase in value stream management practices, which was quite interesting. And the other one was about connected value streams, and I think these are more or 4 times more likely to have a lead time that's less than 1 hour. I didn't understand what that was about. Can you kind of just explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so on the value stream management implementation roadmap that we have, there is a step called Connect. And what that step is describing is an organization's ability to connect their digital value stream to basically the data to the value stream. So, for example, a lot of people would have a DevOps tool chain, and there'd be parts in it like a product backlog, a development tool, testing tools, deployment tools. But they may not be able to see all of that as a value stream. But when they connect those pieces of their DevOps tool chain and they say, oh, I can now see that I've got data that forms a value stream, they then can start measuring what they're doing with in terms of their flow. So this is on the software engineering side.
Right, yeah. Okay.
So the lead time, there's 2 main metrics that we're using in this year's report. And this is a little bit of a controversial area. If we go back to the 2022 report, we'll see the results of some micro research we did last year, because we had a hypothesis that we knew was fairly true based on our kind of narrative learnings as practitioners. But our hypothesis was that there wasn't a standard definition for either lead or cycle time across the industry, and it varies from practitioner to practitioner, and lean people tend to have a different definition from DevOps people, for example. So we're quite clear about the definitions that we use. For us, lead time, we take the DORA definition from code commit to production. And cycle time, we take end to end. But that particular wow moment is saying that if people have made that connection between what they've got in their DevOps tool chain or other digital tool chain and started to see it as a value stream, then they are 4 times more likely to have the lowest level of lead time, i.e. the fastest time to market. So in summary, if you can see into the data, if you've got that practice of being able to see into the data of the flow of your value stream, you are improving the speed of your value stream.
Yeah, and the other one I picked up on was kind of the tiering of the users of VSM as well. So there was a I think I point again on the same page where it said actually elite performers are more likely to use kind of VSM in general as well. So,
Yeah.
so that was interesting. Okay, so let's move on to where it talks about sort of delivery or value delivery. Can you just kind of explain the results on that page a little bit more? That was kind of a little bit more detail into the report itself. So that was quite interesting to look at.
Is that the bit about the notions of the tool chain or the value hypotheses?
The tool chain, I believe. Yeah.
Yes, again, this is a bit of micro research that we did this year. And the micro research, the idea behind micro research is because when we do a full survey, it's 30 odd questions. We try and make it as short as possible. We try and make it only 10 minutes, but that's still quite a lot of work. So what we try and do is pieces of micro research, just around normally 1 or 2 questions, multiple times a year. Like I said, we did one last year about the definitions of lead and cycle time.
Right.
And this year we did one around the notions of the DevOps tool chain. And the hypothesis behind it was that the market was generally split between people that think that a DevOps tool chain is essentially a CI/CD pipeline. So it starts at sort of version control and code commit and finishes at deployment, versus a whole other set of practitioners that think about what we call the fuzzy front end. So recognize that the DevOps tool chain starts much earlier, at least in the product backlog, potentially as early as a portfolio management tool if an organization has implemented that, which would normally be a pattern in a larger enterprises.
Yeah.
And that also that things happen post-deployment. So value is not always realized. In fact, is very rarely realized at the point of deployment of a new enhancement. It takes time. So there is the whole kind of IT operations part of this where the product is long-lived, the value is being realized over an extended period of time, and we have other concerns around things like availability. And that actually we need to be able to monitor and observe our long-lived product in production in order to learn those things that will then feed back. So it also becomes much more of a loop, which is quite challenging for us when we talk about value streams, because a value stream feels like a very linear thing, but I often draw it as a loop. It's quite hard to do value stream mapping exercises as a loop. So like the human brain doesn't really fit with it. But the whole point that I'm trying to make is that it is a continuous cycle. We deploy a change, we observe what the customer experience is, and we learn from that change, and we take actionable insights that then feed back into our next phase of development. So those ideas go back into our product backlog and go through the same cycle. Yeah,
so I think it's I mean it's I agree that it's not starting with the CI/CD pipeline. As you said, there are certain elements of it that are much earlier than that, and there should be part of that kind of approach. But did that connect with the value hypothesis? Is that what was kind of the
so the way that the connection there is that so first we'll just finish off that little preview.
Sorry,
And there's no worries. I think that one of the differences between DevOps and VSM and this was part of the hypothesis, is the more practiced practitioners, if that's not too tautological a statement, of DevOps were more likely to think of a DevOps tool chain as more of an end-to-end, like I just described, more of a life cycle, a continuous running life cycle, and more likely to include planning, and more likely to include post-deployment activities around monitoring observability, and understand that what we learn is feeding what we do. So if we go back to that point about including planning, so that's the practitioners that think of DevOps tool chain as CI/CD pipelines don't think of planning as being part of it. Planning includes this definition of the value hypothesis, and this is a key practice in value stream management, is not just saying that we're going to create a feature, but actually right at the start understanding why it is that we're creating that feature, and doing that with a customer-centric view. So saying, we want to create this feature because our customers have asked for it, or we believe that they'd like it. And we believe if we deliver this feature, it's going to change their experience in this way. And we can measure that by doing this. So, for example, it could just be as simple as usage. You know, we'll give them a new button, and if 60% of them hit that button, then we know it's been successful. It's like a really basic example. But that value hypothesis, we discovered this year, is giving us quite a lot of indications about adoption and also organizational performance. So the people that are doing that most effectively are having higher levels of performance, and we're also seeing quite a lot of granularity about when people do it, because, as you know, as an agile practitioner, we break work down. So we have very large pieces of work defined at the portfolio level, and then they get more and more granular as we get nearer the PBI or the product backlog increment. And actually, for me as a practitioner, I'm always like, we should have value hypotheses at the PBI level, because the quicker we go, the faster we go, the smaller our batches are, the one piece flow that we get, and we want to know the impact of every change that we make. But actually, to align an organization, which is particularly important in a large enterprise, we need to be able to cascade that value hypothesis all the way down, all through the different levels of epics and features and PBIs.
Sure. And I mean, just kind of circling back on the DevOps things, just very quickly, because you mentioned that, are we sort of as an industry guilty of focusing just on that DevOps, and then that's become that sort of pipeline, and then we've forgotten the bits before that and after that as well? Is that kind of too much maybe emphasis on just that sort of, pipeline bit?
I think DevOps is a really interesting movement. That, because various things happened at the start, right? So people consciously avoided having a manifesto. They wanted to, I used to use a slide a lot about, it was like a set of scales, and on one side there would be a cage, and on the other side there would be a bird. So what we were always trying to do with DevOps was kind of let it fly free, but it couldn't be completely free, because we needed definitions around it in order to have any language or vocabulary to talk about it with other people. But what it did mean, or has meant, is that there is disagreement and conflicting understandings in the marketplace about what it is. And that's really what that micro research set out to describe. And actually, if we look at it more closely, we can see things like on our Slack workspace, we had nearly 60% of people going with the sort of value stream definition, and then conversely on LinkedIn a bit, well, actually, sorry, everybody, the highest levels were the CI/CD pipeline, but the highest comparative levels of seeing it's a value stream were on our own Slack workspace and on LinkedIn with the higher levels of practitioners. So the split was definitely there. I think for me, that notion of DevOps being technology, DevOps being a tool chain, DevOps being a pure engineering practice has been detrimental to the development of it. I've been lucky enough to be associated with the DevOps Institute, where we've always focused on the cultural aspects of it. Our whole tagline was about being about the humans of DevOps. So I think DevOps was very interesting because it did bring the cultural human aspect into the world that a lot of our software practices, our software engineering practices, didn't look at so much. I think Agile did. I think Agile started to realise that people were feeling a lot of pain in traditional projects, and there was a lot of burnout going on. But I think DevOps stepped it up another level. So yes, short answer is, yeah, I don't think it's helped DevOps' cause. That it's been, it's become, a lot of people have said, DevOps is CI/CD.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's kind of something I've certainly picked up on. Is kind of missing a couple of the tricks there.
You've reminded me actually of a conversation I had with Dave Farley a few years ago, who, along with Jez Humble, wrote the book on continuous delivery. And I was at a kind of like a private event where he and I were on a panel with a consulting company in London. And he was saying how much he really just wanted to rename the whole DevOps movement continuous delivery. And I said, sentimentally, as in like, and conceptually, I completely understand why he wants to do that. And if we think back to the Agile Manifesto and the first principle about the continuous delivery of value to customers, that makes perfect sense. But by that point, and this was probably, 7 years ago, by this point, excuse the word, but DevOps or continuous delivery had already been bastardized, I would say, by DevOps to become the meaning of just what we do when we do the technical art of continuous delivery, and we'd forgotten conceptually about what that meant in terms of delivering value to customers.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, and I agree with that. Okay, so that particular section concludes as a summary of that. It says build VSM in from the start, so to kind of make sure it kind of drives the value for for customers. Break down your work items into smaller user stories, as you said. So that kind of delivers a piece by piece sort of experience, and be customer centric throughout. What you're doing as well. Kind of focus on drive customer delight. Essentially, it's kind of that particular section. I like that kind of summary. It was good to kind of get into the data, but then sort of have a conclusion to to those sections. Now, obviously, we can't do the whole report justice. There's like a ton of other stuff in there. I think it goes on to like 30+ pages or so. But the other sections in the report do include things like measuring value, leading with value, and the implementation roadmap, which I thought was quite cool. I really love that. I think that does actually, as you said, kind of draw it in pictures. I'm all for pictures. I have to say, I'm a very visual person. So whenever something somebody gives me like a page or a paragraph, I say, how can I draw this? How can I kind of put it in a visual way? So I really do love the roadmap itself. So yes, that's like I said, kind of a lot more information in the report. So we'll certainly include information about the report on how to go and get that. So Helen, I just kind of wanted to just closing remarks. Just kind of wanted to thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate your insights, and wonderful to be able to kind of talk to you, and I really appreciate you coming on the channel. As we said, all the sort of links for the report and everything else that Helen does in the VSM consortium and so on will be in the description of the video. So just kind of want to have you maybe as a closing remark, if you had anything to add on.
Just a really big thank you for setting this up and spending some time with me talking about this research, which me and the team have spent quite a lot of time and effort putting together, and really enjoyed it. But we hope that the community around us finds it useful as well. So thanks very much for taking time to walk through some of it.
No, my pleasure. Like I said, you're love to have you back on again, and we can have a chat about something else, I'm sure. So that's it, guys. Thank you all for watching, and bye for now.